Good morning, good evening, and hello to everyone. I'm always trying to include all the time zones here when I say good morning. I'm super excited about bringing this lady to you because Linda and I connected. We just tried to figure that out actually behind this thing while we were waiting to go live. I believe we connected via Instagram, and I love when things like that happen and somebody just comments and says, hey, I really love what you do. I love your approach is very different in a grief space. And, little did we know, all of a sudden we had this amazing conversation, really beautiful connection. We actually also discovered that we live like 30 minutes from each other. And we tried to do this live, but then everything just happened so quickly. And now here we are live on camera, not live in person. But anyway, I'm going to stop with my rambling on here and hand the microphone over to Linda Goldspink-Lord. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'd like for you to introduce yourself to our audience, please.
Thanks, Marie. And look, thank you so much for having me here. As you said, my name's Linda, and I am a mum, and I'm also a business owner, and recently, very excitedly, an author, which I'm sure we'll talk about later.
Yes, we'll definitely talk about that.
Yeah, and I've been through a big journey in my life and experienced grief in so many ways. I think grief shows up in our life. Doesn't have to always be death, but I've certainly had that as well. And led me to this moment in time, which led me to your Instagram page, and here we are now.
I'm so glad that we connected. I was really touched by your story, and I just love when I meet other people that really appreciate that space that we have created in the field of grief, because I'm just going to let you tell that in your words. What was it that stood out for you that made you reach out to us, actually, to our group?
Yeah, look, I feel like, in my journey of grief, and I lost my mum. I hate the word loss, but my mum passed away. And then not long after that, probably about 18 months, 2 years, my beautiful daughter, Molly, was killed on our property. Mm-hmm. And, your world is in free spin and free fall, and life is, and it's challenging. And so during that journey, I learned how poorly a lot of people process and manage grief. And so now that it's 10 years on from me and I have traversed it, and I know we'll talk about this in a moment, but I get really frustrated that the message is constantly that this grief is this heavy burden that will weigh you down significantly forever. And yes, grief, it finds a place in your heart, but so does joy and love and life and hope. And so many grief groups, well-intentioned, focused on that burden all the time. And there's some Instagram groups I was following that I had to actually unfollow because I would get so frustrated at this, the narrative all the time. And it's almost like feeding into that belief that if you suffer severe loss, that's it. Life is over.
Yeah.
And you don't do that.
You speak straight to my heart, Linda. You really do. I am so grateful, and I'm even more so grateful that I asked you to put that into your words, because I feel I keep talking about that all the time, what the difference is between our group and other groups. And there's no me wanting to shame other groups. There's certainly a space for that where people need to talk about that. And it's not that we put a stop to that in our group. I let people talk about their grief, of course. But for me, I always see it as where am I picking you up from? So I can help you to get to the space of healing, to a space of hope and happiness and joy. And
a different possibility, a different possibility. Can I just actually share one other thing that
please.
Connecting? I had spent some time with a beautiful friend of mine who lost her husband. Again, I hate the word loss, but her husband passed away very unexpectedly, and was sitting on the veranda, just, having this beautiful present time chatting. And she mentioned a book that she'd read, and she mentioned the person who'd written the book, whose husband had passed away while he's on business, and she'd written a book and she'd read it. And then you and I chat, and I realized it was your book she was talking about. And that's when I go, we were meant to meet. So
I love it. That is so
really
beautiful.
Isn't it? I love how the universe kind of does that, doesn't it?
I love it
for us.
Synchronicity. I'm so happy to hear that. I'm grateful that when I hear about people reading my book and finding hope in it, want to actually divert back to you, and let's get started with the story. So you mentioned that you lost first your beautiful mom and then your daughter within such a short amount of time, within under 2 years, and now we're talking 10 years after that. It's I'm just thinking of a lot of people sitting there thinking, oh well, of course, after all the time, but other people go like, how do you ever get over it?
Sure.
Do you mind giving us a bit of a rundown in terms
absolutely.
of how did you actually deal with that? Because you've had to deal with accumulated loss, one above the other, and so many things come together, and losing both your mom and your daughter.
Absolutely. And I guess to add to that, prior to that, I'd been a CEO and I collapsed at work from a health condition, a life-threatening health condition. And so I had been, or that's why I talk about grief can show up in many ways. For me, it was the loss of my health, the loss of my career. And then that was the year I turned 40. And then during that time, my mum came down from the country to help nurse me. And little did I know that she had terminal cancer. So I was dealing with great loss in my life. And I loved my job. I'd worked hard at it. I was involved in policy development and media work, and in drug and alcohol. And I love what I did. So that was really hard managing that loss. And then mum, and I just thought she was slowing down. And then mum passed away. But I look back at some of the gifts, and we do get gifts, even though we wouldn't have asked to get the gifts in this way. I would have rather get the gifts in a much gentler way. But my illness meant that I wasn't working, which meant I could spend time with my mum in Wagga, which meant I could sit there and watch how people process or don't process grief. And I share lots of stories in my book about how people would come and visit mum in her, and we were still in denial that she was dying, but this is probably the last few weeks of her life. And I knew, and they knew, and mum knew that they would never see each other again. But there was this, they just didn't even know how to say goodbye or thank you for being in my life. It was like, okay, Anne,
it is confronting. It's challenging.
Really confronting. And so that's when I started to think, wow, gosh, we don't handle this grief very well. And I used to speak about mum and my journey. And then little did I know that, a few years later, our beautiful Molly would lose her life on, in an accident on our property. And that was, I thought I'd learnt life lessons, losing my health, my job, my mum. But Molly just stopped me in my tracks, just stopped me.
I can only imagine.
And so it was, it was dark times and a real feeling of, how do I get through this? Because actually, I didn't even know if I could, because again, well-meaning people would share their story with me. And there's a beautiful network of, and I'm sure you've experienced this too, people who've gone through a similar thing who do reach out and share stories. And they were beautiful. But then some of them would say things like, well, these are the best antidepressants. This is what I did. This is how you can self-medicate. And, unfortunately, marriage will probably break up. Like, I didn't want to know that my marriage was going to break. And you Google it and it says marriages will break up. It says, and then people would say, well, your children will never be functional again, because that was their experience. But maybe no one had ever shown them perhaps it could be different. So I remember just thinking, how am I going to get through this? And again, I share very honestly in my book, there are 2 times that I said, actually, no, I won't get through this, and I need to be with Molly, because the pain was just unmanageable. Plus, I didn't want her to be on her own. She needed a parent with her. So, but some of those were
can I just quickly, just for the audience, just so they get the full picture, how many children do you actually have? Because there's more to the story. And Molly was where in that?
She was the middle. So Riley was 15 at the time, and Emily was 10. And my beautiful Emily suffered great trauma because she was with Molly when the accident happened, and she had to ring the ambulance. I mean, it was on our property. I was minutes away, but still there was that trauma. And
of course,
our son Riley, I mean, the flip side is, I want to put out there straight away, yes, they've been through a lot, but Riley went on to be captain of the school. He is now a very successful lawyer in Sydney, and Emily's in her final year of nursing. But it hasn't been this, instant, okay, we're better now. There's been a journey, because we actually jump in.
It's not a flick the switch situation at all.
No. So yes, very much I had to make sure that they'd already lost, their beautiful sister just left them.
How old was Molly?
She was 13.
13. So 15, 13 and 10.
13. Wow. Just lit up a room and
like she just did before our interview.
Yes,
Want to
yes.
share that? That's so beautiful. We just didn't know how to sort this out because we had this beautiful beam of light coming in, and it just came out of nowhere, and it just
we should have taken a
so
photo.
just leave it.
But the great thing is Molly hasn't actually ever left us. And but still, at that time, when you're in a world of pain, you don't know about what will happen beyond. I've got to get through the next minute, the next hour. And for me, carrying my grief, carrying my husband's grief, mind you, he also carried his own. He also carried me, but also the children. And I just felt like their life had been changed so dramatically and so instantly. How could I take their hope for the future away from them as well? And that was probably the thing that really, really drove me to find a different way, because sadly I had known families in the past who'd lost a child and they didn't talk about it, and they did self-medicate, and they did, I guess their family did kind of, fall apart. And I was really, really aware of that. So it was like, I want to do this differently.
Yeah, I'm so grateful that you talk about this so openly. And I also want to put two disclaimers out there, actually. One, everybody's got a different grief story, and both Linda and I so agree on that. We're so on the same page with that everybody needs to find their own way. So we're not saying don't medicate, we're not saying medicate. It's all about you need to find your own way. But I also agree that it's not that straight away, like when somebody hears about your adversity and then they instantly come with a list of medication that you need to be on. I'm like, leave that up to the health professionals. That's always my disclaimer in everything. I always make a really big point about, and this is why I'm putting the disclaimer in here in the interview, to not recommend medication at all whatsoever. Leave that up to the health professionals. And when I see posts like that, they're instantly deleted because I just don't agree with that. So that's the one thing. And the other thing, because we had a situation like that just recently in the group where a lady went very, very upset, let me put it in the nicest way possible, and actually addressed one of my previous interviewees that came on board, and bless her, she shared such a beautiful story, and then got attacked for saying that there was a gift in the passing. And I agree with that. I love that there's a white feather floating right up to the sky in front of my office. This so often happens when I do interviews like that. And we talk about loved ones and I see your feather floating past. It's just such a beautiful sign for me. Anyway, I'm going to bring you back to you in a minute. I just wanted to say this because it's really important to me. It was all about how can you say there is a gift in this. I often talk about the hidden gifts and adversity that we are allowed to unwrap and discover throughout dealing with our grief. And I love that you put that out there. I love that you talk about that. So I'm actually going to ask you if you want to share a little bit about that. How did you find those gifts and what were they for you, if you don't mind sharing this here?
I guess I didn't understand those gifts early on. I mean, how can you?
Of course.
How can you in a world of pain? But if I had to summarize it, the gifts have been making the most of every day. Truly making the most of every day, because we just don't know. And that day was a normal day. My husband was actually overseas at the time. Oh, wow. And so there was a whole other layer of pain added to that. And I did not know. And I woke up that morning, by the end of the day, my world would change forever. Of course. I don't know today. Is that going to happen today? Is it going to happen tomorrow? I don't know. So the gift that Molly has given me is absolutely be in the present. And I mean, I'm human. I still have my bad days and my good days, and I get frustrated. But what happens now is I pull myself back to the present. And right now I'm sitting here with you sharing this story, and I can be really focused. That was the gift she gave me. The other gift she's given me is absolute for me. Again, and I keep always saying, this is my disclaimer, my journey. People you love never leave you. And that love is this energetic thread that binds us forever. And she shows up like the feather, like the light. They don't leave us. And I want to share that with so many people, because if we know that love is forever and love is eternal, will we live differently? Will we grieve differently? Will we communicate differently? And what I'm really loving in this journey since the book's been out is the conversations that it's allowing, and that people are suddenly going, oh, well, I saw, my best friend after she died, or I heard my dad call out to me. And it's almost like they've gone, oh, thank goodness, I'm not crazy. This is real. And so,
people needed validation.
I love more deeply, I live more deeply. And Molly has given me that
Love
gift.
it.
And it's,
Yeah.
and yes, I understand why someone could say, how could you find a gift at a great loss? But what's the alternative? That Molly's still not, she's still died. Do I live my life in a place of darkness forever? Is that what I'm meant to do? Is that why I'm here? No, it's not.
No.
And at least that woman felt comfortable enough to share that in your group. But for me, it's like there are gifts. And even my beautiful daughter, Emily, and I'm sure she won't mind me sharing this. And both Riley and Emily let me share their story in the book.
Yeah.
Emily said to me just recently, Mum, we've been through a really hard, tough journey. And I wish my sister was here, but gosh, she's taught me to live. And I went, oh.
That just gave me goosebumps. just hearing that is so beautiful. I really love when kids grow up with such awareness. You know, I had a really beautiful conversation with my sons yesterday over dinner where I said I had this lady that recently joined our group and her husband just passed last week, and she's got 11-year-old twins. And I said, what is it that you would like to share with them? You know, how did you get through this? And it is just so beautiful being able to have these conversations. And I don't know how you found it. I just really found that after Rob passed, and we were already quite a close-knit family, but after that, we were just inseparable. We were this really, really strong triangle, like so pulled together and really in tune. But one thing that really stood out for me, that was the most challenging and confronting part of my healing journey to deal with. And I'd love to put this question back to you, because I understand it's confronting, but I also understand, I feel it's something that we really need to talk about. For me, something that exploded after Rob passed was the fear that something could now happen to them. I just could not control that at first. It was really the hardest one for me to address, that I had this really heightened fear around their safety, around what would happen if something would happen to me now, and what would happen to them then. And like all these, you know, what if questions were driving me nuts for a while. Sorry, I shouldn't use the term so loosely, but it was really something that got to me, and I needed to work on that. And I don't remember one particular moment where just switching was over, but when I check in now, it's almost gone. I can't say completely, but it's almost gone again. So I think a bit of a natural fear is always there as a parent, you know, as in, you know, what would happen if something happens to your kids. But it was really heightened. Did you experience that at all, or was that not?
Look, it's a great question. I feel like, you know, we know that when the brain's such an archaic organ that it tends to, when we've been through trauma, it does jump ahead and gives you worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So there's probably been a few times where I might jump and think the worst, but no, in fact, I'm probably the opposite. And you're not the first person to say that to me. I've had other parents say, gosh, you must want to wrap them in cotton wool now. But no, because I feel like, and this is a tough one, and I'm not saying this was all predestined, but Molly was loved greatly and deeply. We were parents that had clear boundaries and looked after them and did everything we could, and yet she still died. And so, and I shouldn't say that smiling, I just mean that I can't control. And if I control and let my fear get in the way, then I won't live fully again. So it's almost like complete surrender and go, that, you know, my nan is 102 and, you know, she'll be 103 in August. And I look at her and go, okay, so, you know, why do you get to live a long life and Molly didn't? I don't have the answers. So I can actually say, no, I didn't do that. I feel like I realized that we just don't really have a lot of control. We just have to live in the moment. And so I can understand why you would think like that, but no. I mean, again, there are a few times where I've kind of gone, oh, you know, when Emily first started going out in the town, I'll just be careful. But I think I would have been like that anyway. So no, I guess I haven't gone down that path, because I think if I did, I would have gone really down that path. So it's almost like surrender and just let it go and know that this is it. We cannot control the future as much as we would try. And obviously I still do all the normal parenting things and have boundaries and have clear expectations about safe behavior, but things happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. I'm glad that you didn't have that. I think it took me almost a year to let that dissolve. Like somehow, it was incredible. It was such a journey, and yet from day dot, I was, my focus was on healing, on happiness, on joy. I knew instantly, and I love that you talk about love. That Molly taught you to live more deeply, love more deeply. I always say, love just wants us to be happy. It's that simple. Love wants us to be happy, and if somebody loves you so deeply, they just want you to be happy. And it honestly makes no difference whether that's your daughter, your husband, your child, your parents. If there is love, they want you to be happy. I think it's that simple. I really truly believe that love is that simple, and that's all I hold on to. I knew for a fact that Rob wanted us to live a happy and joyful life, and I'm absolutely certain that Molly would want the exact same thing for her siblings, for her parents, and it's really beautiful that you have that. So
can I just say though, on that point you made, the difference was I felt like what you've been through, you had so much responsibility and you were carrying so much of the, I hate the word weight, but you were managing your children's grief, but I had Pete to share the load, even though it's a different, I know I shouldn't be comparing grief, but
no, it's fine. I appreciate that.
Yeah, perhaps if I'd been on my own, I'd be thinking, I don't know if I could cope if I lost someone else. And I still don't know how I'd cope, but I did have another adult walking the journey with me. So I feel like what you've gone through is it's great loss, and it's a different level of responsibility. So I could share the load sometimes, whereas perhaps you weren't able to do that as much, which would make you kind of go, oh gosh, I've just got to make sure everything's okay.
Just very different.
I don't know if that's true or not, but that just sort of
came. Probably. Linda, thank you so much for the acknowledgement. I really, really appreciate that. I would love for you to share a little bit about your book. How did that come about? What can people expect? And don't worry, everybody watching this, we will share the link to the book underneath as well, so you can find it. So tell us a little. How did that come about? And where can you find it?
So thank you for asking me that question.
Of course.
As the journey continued, and again, I would have many people say to me when I got to year 3, year 4's the year you'll have the breakdown. Then it was year 5. And I kept on feeling that wasn't going to be true for me. And so when I got about the year 5 mark, I thought, well, actually, I'm happy most days. I'm experiencing life. Yes, I still have those really rock bottom days at the base of the mountain where, I'm feeling all the grief. But I just wanted to share, and I'd read grief books, and they would talk about the stages of grief, and there wasn't a lot of hope. And because I didn't feel, one of the stages of grief, which I know are very outdated now, was anger, and anger wasn't something I felt. So it was like, well,
same.
I felt, so I'm feeling like I'm doing this differently. And I just sat on the veranda one day and started journaling and thought, I want to write a book. And what happened that was really amazing, I was meditating one day and I just heard this crawling through the darkness came to me.
Wow.
I came out of meditation and thought,
I'm having goosebumps again.
Yeah, it was really good because I loved, and I thought that is the name of my book, because the analogy is, grief is this mountain and it's all overwhelming. And then as time goes on, the mountain doesn't get any smaller, but it's part of your landscape. But sitting at the mountain, sitting at the base was really important, where it's dark, it's hard to breathe. You can't see any light. Light represents happiness. Sometimes you sit there alone. Sometimes someone's with you. And then when you're ready, you take the next step. And the next step for me was a crawl. And then when I was ready, the next step to stand. And so for me, it was about explaining that I could sit at the base of the mountain forever, because after a while that darkness, that solitude becomes comfortable. Or I could do what other people have done, that I could sprint away. But for me, it was the steps, that each step I learned something, I traversed a little bit differently, and I wanted to share a real story, and it is real. But what I do love about the book is that it takes you like this. You're not down, 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 because I have read some other memoirs. And after I finished reading, I wanted to vomit. It was like I was so down. I couldn't. I thought that has. And if I'd read that book early on, I would have been in trouble, because I would have been like, oh, that's all that's ahead. So that was the story. Plus, Molly was constantly in my ear, Mom, the book. And look, I'm sure a lot of people who go through grief go and see psychic mediums. I've done all that. And every time I'd go, they go, what's this book that you're writing? Okay. And I'm very proud in a short amount of time, the impact it's having, because I share the story. Plus I share practical tips. One of the things I learned in this journey was about how much what you eat and what you drink impacts on your grief from a gut perspective.
Yeah.
And so that's a practical tip. And when we're sad, sometimes we eat chocolate and sugar and lollies. And unfortunately, it kind of adds to those harder feelings.
Yeah.
So I put everything in there that I wish I'd known. And I'm really, really proud of it. So that's what people will expect, is a real story.
Yeah.
And people say to me, Linda, it's like you're talking, and I wanted it to be real. I wanted it to be something that I had to make a decision at the beginning. Do I go all in? And I go all in. Let me know. I mean, obviously there's still some things I've kept to myself, but I shared the times that I wanted to kill myself. But I don't know if I wanted to kill myself. I just want to get away from the pain.
Yeah.
And what did I do? Where did that lead to? How did I navigate that? And I just share things that I hope at the end of it, people can feel differently about if they go through their own loss, how would they manage it? But if someone in their life is experiencing loss, how could they support them?
Yeah. That is really beautiful. And I love that you have such a mix in your book of sharing your story authentically, but also the tips very authentically, what helped you to get through this, and that feeling of wanting to be with her, not actively wanting to kill yourself, but wanting to be with her. I can only imagine like what that would feel like. I can very much relate to that. I had moments in my life where I felt like that too, where I would have never actively done anything, but really wanted to be on the other side. But that was very early childhood trauma. I did not go through that with Rob, luckily, because again, you know, we have very different situations, and I'm also not here to compare, but I knew instantly that I'm it now. I have to step up massively. I have to be omnipresent for them, you know, just like love. I love, somebody said that yesterday, love is omnipresent. And I just so love that.
I love that.
That term. And I agree with that. So I felt like I had to be omnipresent. I had to be love for my boys, ongoing, just protect them, be there for them, hold space for them. And also because, and this is another question I'd like to ask you, because my boys dealt with the grief so differently. One wanted to talk about it all the time. The other one didn't want to talk about it all the time. And then it flipped, but it was never the same. So I was always like, do I talk about it? Do I not? And I didn't want to make a constantly, I have to talk about Dad every single day to not forget him. I'm not worried about forgetting him at all. But I'm also not one to constantly rub it into their faces. So I did a bit of a mix. I did not completely not talk about him on purpose, but I also did not completely, like I did as if I would do it on a daily basis, you know, like we don't talk about Dad all the time just because he's on a business trip. And that to me is something quite similar, because Rob used to travel a lot. So I want to put that back to you. How did your kids actually deal with that, and how did you deal with it as a family? Because you mentioned, unfortunately, yes, the statistic is high of marriages often falling apart after that, but I don't want to focus on that. I want to focus on your story, because yours didn't, and that is so beautiful. So give us a bit of hope, a bit of light here. How did you manage to deal with it as a family?
I think, you know, what you've done is amazing, and I probably do the same thing. It's like, you know, we talk about Molly, not every day, but we just bring her up, like, you know, it's just, she's just there. But they did grieve very differently. And I was very conscious. I mean, you know, Riley as a males tend to communicate differently. And, you know, but Emily also had the trauma. So I was very aware that they had different processes. But I would check in, and with Riley was silent. There were some times where I'd say, hey, we're going to talk about this, and made sure they had the right professional support that they needed, and did all those things. But you know, one of the things that we've been so grateful for, and back to the book, and I share a whole chapter about this, is how Molly gives us these signs all the time. And to the point that even the kids now, I shouldn't call them kids, they're both adults, but
they're still your kids.
They are. They know it. Not even like, Mom, you're crazy. It's like they know it. And there are so many, and I try and share as many of these in the book, because that's what's great. And I feel like them knowing that she's still around is pretty amazing. It's still, they still miss her. You know, she's in a different form, but they, you know, they get to have that, but they still miss her. And one of the things that Molly does is sets car alarms off. And it was Emily's birthday 2 weeks ago, and she tells the story. She was sitting in her boyfriend's car. She's in the car. He gets out and goes to get something, and the car alarm, actually, no, it was Molly's birthday. She did this, and the car alarm went off while Emily's sitting in the car. And it's just the amount of stories I could give you about the alarm going off at really profound times. And now we know it. And she also plays tricks on Riley. She changes his radio channel, and he now knows it's her. And Riley's beautiful girlfriend, Mia, probably believed it, wasn't sure. And then one day she'd been talking about Molly, hops in the car, and her car radio has switched to this funny, it's a Christian radio station. And she goes, oh my goodness, I was just talking about it, and then it happened. So we talk about those signs. And so the important thing is, you're right, everyone grieves differently. But as a mother, I just made sure I kept an eye on them, and I didn't want Riley to bottle it all up, because if you never spoke about it, that would have concerned me. So we do talk about it, and when, you know, they had to get some professional help, just to make sure. I just wanted someone to check on them and go, I feel like they're doing a great job. What do you think? And to get that professional advice was really important, and they were doing a great job.
I absolutely love that, you know, you have this support ready for them, because it's just something that that is really, really important. And I know we are actually already at the end of our interview now, but I really want to ask you this one question still. How did you deal with it as a couple? Because this is something that I feel would be, like really shedding some light here and give some hope to other people, if you don't mind.
For me, communication's always the thing. Talking about it. We made a vow early on in the piece, where it was when I basically said, I'll go and be with Molly, and Peter said to me, well, you can't. And I just said, well, but how am I going to stay here? And he just said to me, I'll carry you. And so that was, I know,
it's make me cry.
It's beautiful. And I share that story in the book, because again, you spoke about it before, it's love, and love will let you, enables you to do anything. So it was about communicating. The biggest challenge I had was he would very freely allow me to have my harder days. But when I saw him having a harder day, I was like, oh no, Pet's having a hard day. How are we going to get through this? And I had to really step back and go, Linda, he is just as entitled, and he needs to have those bad days as you. And so I had to learn that very early on. So it was about communicating, walking the path together. Sometimes he'd carry me, sometimes I'd carry him, and also be really grateful for the days where the light appeared, the happiness appeared, the joy appeared, and not to feel guilty, and to embrace that, to know when we were ready to go out as a couple in public, because we did that early on and it was too soon. So it comes back to communication, talk, share. Know that there were some things I wouldn't share with him. I would go to my tribe and talk to my sister or my friends, or there may be other things. But it was always about, we might go that way, but we keep coming back. So you would, you can see my hands
learning
doing
by
that.
doing.
And we love each other more. Like he's my best friend, and we just, you know, we're together, and we've worked through it together, and feel like you can do that. What happens is, if you carry it and you block it and you don't talk about it, and then you start going on a different journey. If you stay on that journey too long, then you don't cross paths again.
It's really tricky to come back.
Do that. So, I mean, I'm simplifying it, but what I want to do is to show people that it is possible. Absolutely is possible.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because this was actually my final question that I wanted to ask you to wrap up this beautiful interview, and I'm so grateful for having you share your story here. For those who are watching this now, who are at the very beginning of the journey of, I'm going to make it quite specific, of losing a child here, there is so much darkness and heaviness out there around this topic. I want to bring this question back to you. What would you like to say to them? Because I know there is hope. I know there is a different path, and I know that you've walked it. So what would you like to share from your experience 10 years on that you would like to say to them, to give them a bit of a hint in the right direction?
I love your questions. You've been asking the most amazing questions.
Thank you.
That you'll get through this. You will get through this. And don't rush the process, because grief does hurt. It hurts. And there'll be times where you think, I cannot do this anymore. Bring in people, ask for help. Put your hands up and say, I am struggling, I need help. And it may not be you even know how to ask for help, but reach into those people that you know will help carry you. And it may just be something simple like picking the kids up from school for you, or hanging the washing out, or, you know, there are different shelves of friendship. So the first thing to know is you will get through this. It will hurt like nothing. I talk about like acid being poured on your soul. You know, it will hurt.
Wow. Yeah.
It will hurt. But
I use a very similar term.
It's like you can have this, you know, happiness and sadness, and, you know, someone said a day sweet and sour. There are opposites. You will get through it, but got your amazing resource. People can contact me on my socials, share their stories, ask questions. I feel like my book will be an amazing resource. And I have already given that to some newly bereaved parents of children, and they've just come back and said, I just realized that what I'm going through is normal, that I'm not going crazy. I mean, I think there's such a thing as normal grief, but so many levels, they suddenly went, I'm not going mad. This is actually part of it, because we just don't talk about it enough. So I am so grateful that you've had me on here, and so happy to take questions from anybody. And I'll follow the thread on Facebook, so that if there are any questions, I'm more than happy to share my experience. That's all I can do.
I really appreciate it so much. And I love how open you are to talk about all these questions, because they are confronting, and it is a journey. I'm absolutely with you on that. So for everybody joining us here live today or watching this in replay, make sure that you check the comments below. Linda will share her links, how you can get in touch with her, how you can get her book. We'll be sharing all of that in the comments below. And Linda's also in our group. So if you have any comments or questions, she'll definitely make sure that she can get back to that. So Linda, thank you so much. I really hope that we will meet in person anytime soon.
That would be lovely.
And thank you so much for being here today. And everybody at home watching this, have a fantastic day. This is Linda and Marie signing off. Bye for now.
Bye.